Hello and welcome to the Common Theory video primer series. Today we are presenting Abdel, Adrian, Gordian's Ward, and the background pairing, Sorco's Sailor. Abdel is a mono-white 5-mana commander with 4 power and 4 toughness that reads, when Abdel enters the battlefield, exile any number of other non-land permanents you control until Abdel leaves the battlefield. Create a 1/1 white soldier creature token for each permanent exiled this way. Choose a background. Sorco's Sailor is a 2-mana legendary background enchantment that says commander creatures you control have, whenever this creature attacks a player, if no opponent has more life total than that player, this creature cannot be blocked this turn. Which allows Abdel to deal 16 commander damage to a player over 4 turns if needed. Our main game plan with this deck is to generate infinite mana, infinite soldiers, and infinite enter the battlefield triggers by using Abdel Adrian to exile all of our permanents and bring them back onto the battlefield. This game plan is enabled through our Archaeomancer abilities, which are 5 creatures in the deck that all have enter the battlefield triggers that allow us to bring back a instant or sorcery back into our hands. From there we are able to bring back our flicker spell, such as Ghostly Flicker, and then we can flicker Abdel again or the Archaeomancer along with Peregrine Drake in order to generate the infinite loop of ETB triggers to get back the flicker and untap our lands. This deck is loaded with other enter the battlefield trigger abilities such as Cloud of Fairies to untap our lands, draw triggers such as Muldrifter and Arkham's Astrolabe, our Archaeomancer abilities which will give us back our instants and sorceries, combat skip abilities like Stonehorn Dignitary, which you can use multiple times to target a player to make him skip that many combat steps. Each trigger is a skipped combat step. And we have classic removals such as Oblivion Ring and Journey to Nowhere, that when paired with Abdel's exile ability or a flicker spell, you can use Oblivion Ring or Journey to Nowhere to permanently remove a problematic creature or permanent from the battlefield. Abdel Sorco's is one of the most complicated decks in the format, as you need to understand how your triggers will enter the stack, who to target with your triggers, as well as understanding that you need to fully resolve all of the abilities of a card before regaining priority. Muldrifter, you're able to cast it for the evoke cost, and then stack the trigger so the evoke trigger happens first, allowing the draw 2 trigger to resolve first. Once you draw your 2 cards, you're able to respond to the evoke trigger. Before it sacrifices itself, you're able to flicker Muldrifter, and then will stay on the battlefield permanently, or flicker Abdel so Muldrifter is exiled by Abdel's enter ability. Flicker spells such as Scroll Shift and Blur both say exile up to 1 target creature, and then return it back onto the battlefield under its own control, draw a card. You must first finish drawing your card. Once Abdel is done exiling and coming back, all of the permanents that you exiled with Abdel will return onto the battlefield, and all of their enter the battlefield abilities will trigger onto the stack. From there, you must order which ones will resolve first, and then you assign targets if any of those abilities target anything. It is important to remember that tapping your mana rocks to float mana does not use the stack. Now that we're familiar with our enter the battlefield triggers and how to add them onto the stack appropriately, how do we win? Hierophant's Chalice is a 3-mana mana rock that adds 1 colorless mana that says, when Hierophant's Chalice enters the battlefield, target opponent loses 1 life, you gain 1 life. When Hierophant's Chalice gets exiled by Abdel's enter the battlefield trigger to exile it, and then it comes back, that is the easiest way to present the loop of Abdel enters, Abdel leaves, Hierophant's Chalice enters, target opponent loses 1 life, you gain 1 life, Abdel enters, exile Hierophant's Chalice again, flicker Abdel, Hierophant's Chalice comes back, same opponent loses 1 life. Repeat until you win. If you have 2 Archaeomancer effects on the field, you're able to loop Generous Gift by targeting your flicker spell and Generous Gift with the 2 Archaeomancers. You cast Generous Gift, first destroying all of your opponent's lands, and then all of their other permanents. You destroy the lands first so they're unable to cast any responses from their hand. Once you destroyed all of their permanents and they only have a battlefield full of 3/3 green elephants, You cast Echoing Truth for 2 mana, returning target non-land permanent and all other permanents with the same name as that permanent to their owner's hands, targeting one of the elephants you created with Generous Gift, and because all of the elephant tokens are named elephant, you send them back to your opponent's hands, and because they are tokens, they do not exist in the hand, thus removing all of the permanents that your opponents have and leave them unable to respond. As Gatorbait TV loves to say, it's a flawless victory. But unfortunately, some games you're just unable to get a ETB draw creature or another ETB draw effect, and then you're just left casting the same flicker spell, staying mana neutral, staying card neutral, but you are still creating a 1/1 soldier creature token for every permanent you exile with Abdel. Thus, you're able to create a arbitrary large amount of 1/1 soldiers. And then finally, as I alluded to earlier, sometimes you just beat people in the face with your giant 4/4 commander. It will take 4 turns to take out a player with commander damage, but Abdel is unblockable. Abdel is the only deck in the format that has this enchantment loop. This combo starts with having Oblivion Ring out on the battlefield, then you cast Abdel to exile the Oblivion Ring, and then you cast Journey to Nowhere targeting Abdel. Once Abdel is exiled under the Journey to Nowhere, Oblivion Ring will now enter the battlefield, and then you can use the Oblivion Ring to target the Journey to Nowhere to exile it. And then once the Journey to Nowhere is exiled, Abdel Adrian returns, allowing you to exile any number of permanents you control. You exile the Oblivion Ring, which will then free the Journey to Nowhere, which will then exile Abdel, thus creating this loop of Abdel exiling Oblivion Ring exiling Journey Nowhere, and then Journey Nowhere exiling Abdel. Once you target another creature with Journey to Nowhere, the loop will end. If you have Oblivion Ring and Journey to Nowhere both exiled under Abdel, you need to fully resolve Journey to Nowhere and Oblivion Ring in order for the loop to start. You will have Abdel trigger first, Journey to Nowhere trigger and resolve fully, then Oblivion Ring will trigger and resolve fully in order to start it. And then finally, the most common combo you're going to find in this deck is an Archaeomancer plus your Flicker spell. The most important thing to remember is that you need to have enough mana rocks that produce colored mana exiled with Abdel in order to pay for your next Flicker spell. Cloud Shift only costs 1 mana, Planar Incision costs 2, and there's a bunch of other ones that cost 3 mana. Make sure that you have enough mana to pay for your spells, as well as cast any other additional spells, such as more mana rocks, such as other ETB draw effects that you may come across. Finally, in conclusion, Abdel Sword Coast Sailor is one of the most skill-intensive decks in the format, as you need to understand how the stack works, how to place all of your triggered onto the stack, how they will each resolve, being able to respond to each one of those triggers as they are resolving, which will give you all these nice, beautiful, flexible, instant speed win lines through either Hierophant's Chalice or looping Generous Gift, as well as very important to plan for the future. As you're flickering Abdel just for value, you will see more flicker spells as you draw into them. You may see some removal in there. You might see another answer to a problem that you may see on the battlefield. It's also important to plan out how much mana you will need going to your next turn, as well as if Abdel will have Summoning Sickness in case you need to attack with Abdel, and how many soldiers you need to produce in order to knock out a player. Thank you for watching, and if you want to support the channel, please subscribe and join the Discord in our link below. And become a member over on our Patreon, and let us know what decks you want to see next.